What's up everyone, hope you're doing well, because in today's video we're going to be giving you the top 10 loadouts you'll be using right now in Call of Duty Warzone. Now these are going to be in no particular order, and I always recommend use what's most comfortable to you. And if you're not comfortable, you're not going to be pushing, and if you're not pushing, you're not getting more eliminations, which is kind of the whole point. Whether you're playing casuals, ranked, or even just pubs, all of these loadouts will be great for you to use. Let's get into it. First up, we have the CR56 AMAX and the KSV. These are great options for you to be using right now. I absolutely love them. CR56 AMAX does have a little bit of recoil, but if you can control it, it hits like a Mack truck. For the AMAX, I'm going to rock the mono suppressor. This will make you invisible on your enemy's minimap, give you a bullet velocity buff and a damage range buff. Then we're going to use the reinforced barrel. This will buff that damage at effective range all the way out to 69 meters, while also giving you a bullet velocity buff. Then we're going to rock the vertical foregrip, giving you a huge buff to the horizontal recoil control, along with rocking the extended mag 2, which gives you a 60 round mag. And then we're going to use the recoil springs, buffing that recoil control even more with a horizontal and a vertical recoil control buff. And of course we'll show this to you here in the firing range, but like I said, the CR56 AMAX has a little bit of recoil, but if you can control it, it hits really hard. Next up, we have the KSV, which is highly underrated in my opinion, but very, very competitive in the current meta for sure. For that KSV, I'm rocking the compensator muzzle. Gives you a huge buff to the vertical recoil control. Then we're gonna rock the long barrel, which buffs this all the way out to 20 meters damage at effective range, giving you a huge damage range buff. Then we're gonna rock the vertical foregrip. Controlling that horizontal recoil is key, and it will be super easy with the vertical foregrip. Then we're using the extended mag 2, which will give this a 50 round mag. And then for a lot of my SMGs, I'm running no stock because there's no recoil penalty with the no stock on these SMGs. I'm using no stock, and it will give you a buff to the hip fire movement speed, a buff to the movement speed, and a buff to the strafing movement speed. Next up, we have the GPR91, which seems to be a lot of people's favorites also, along with the SAUG SMG, which I don't think enough people are talking about. For the GPR91, I'm going to be rocking the Volsky Reflex Optic. And then I like the monolithic suppressor here, giving you a buff to the bullet velocity and damage range, also while making you invisible on your enemy's minimap while you're firing. Then we're using the reinforced barrel, giving you a buff to the damage range and bullet velocity, which buffs the damage range all the way out to 50.3 meters. Then we're using the extended mag 2, which will give this a 60 round mag. And then we're rocking the recoil springs here, giving you another buff to the horizontal and vertical recoil control. We'll show this to you here in the firing range as always, but this thing might even hit harder than the AMAX. With this is that SAUG that I talked about, which I don't think gets enough love at all. It's basically the OG Mac 10, has great movement speed, great firing power, and just really feels like a solid option right now. For the SAUG SMG, we're going to use the long barrel here. This will buff that damage range all the way out to about 16.5 meters. Then we're using the Ranger foregrip, giving it a horizontal recoil control buff while also providing some sprinting movement speed. Then we're using the extended mag 2, which will give this a 55 round mag, along with rocking the commando grip, giving this a buff to the aim down sight speed, jumping sprint to fire speed, jumping aim down sight speed, and sprint to fire speed. Then we're rocking the light stock, giving you a huge buff to the hip fire movement speed, and strafing movement speed again. Next up, I'm still real high on the CYPHER 91 and the C9. The C9 is still super easy to use, and the CYPHER 91 still hits really hard. For the CYPHER 91, we're going to rock that monolithic suppressor again, giving that bullet velocity and damage range buff while making you invisible on your enemy's minimap while you're firing. Then the long barrel here, buffing that effective damage range out to 60.6 meters. Then we're going to rock that vertical foregrip, which will really help with that horizontal recoil control. The extended mag 2, giving this a 60 round mag again. And then we're rocking the recoil springs again. If you don't like the iron sights, feel free to take off these recoil springs and put whatever optic makes you comfortable. The recoil springs really do help, and I think that has some pretty clean iron sights. Show this to you in the firing range, but I mean, if you take the iron sights off, it's almost like the Grau. Not quite, but like I said, they're pretty clean. Then of course we have the C9, which is still easy to use, one of the top used meta SMGs in the game, and a very solid option. For the C9, we're rocking the long barrel, giving you a damage range buff. Then I'm using the extended mag 1 because I like a little bit more mobility, which will give it a 40 round mag. Then we're using the commando grip here. I like it because it gives an aim down sight speed buff, a jumping sprint to fire speed buff, a buff to the jumping aim down sight speed buff, and a buff to the sprint to fire speed. Then again, like I said, we're using no stock because there's no recoil penalties at all, giving you a hip fire movement speed, and strafing movement speed buff. Then, like I said, we're going to use the recoil springs a lot here, strictly just to help you with recoil, giving you a horizontal and vertical recoil control buff. For our next loadout, I love the FFAR right now. I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. It's very, very solid option. And then the JACKAL PDW is great in ranked. JACKAL and the Compact 92 are probably my top 2 in ranked. The JACKAL PDW is fantastic. For the FFAR, I'm going to rock the Kepler Microflex. That's just the one that I like to run. Then we're going to use the ported compensator muzzle, giving you a huge buff to the first shot recoil control and a buff to the vertical recoil control. The gain twist barrel here to really maximize this bullet velocity. Then we're using the extended mag 2, giving you a 60 round mag, along with the recoil springs again, really maximizing the horizontal recoil control buff and the buff to the vertical recoil control. Show this to you here in the firing range. But like I said, this thing is an absolute laser beam. I absolutely love the FFAR right now, man, especially as a sniper support option. And of course the JACKAL. JACKAL's just so fun, man. This is I don't know, I don't understand how it's this good again, but man, they buffed the snot out of this, dude. Feels great. For that JACKAL, I'm rocking the long barrel. This will buff that damage range all the way out to 17 meters. Then we're rocking the vertical foregrip, giving you a horizontal recoil control buff. Then I'm rocking the extended mag 2, which will give this a 50 round mag. The no stock, like I've been using on all my SMGs, just feels incredible, giving you a buff to the hip fire, movement speed, and strafing movement speed. And then I'm rocking those recoil springs again, giving you a buff to the horizontal and vertical recoil control. For our final loadout, the Kilo 141 is still goated, and the Compact 92 is probably my #1 option when it comes to ranked or any SMG right now. If you know how to use it, it's just too good. You're just not losing a lot of gunfights with it. For the Kilo, I'm rocking the monolithic suppressor, giving you that buff to the bullet velocity and damage range. Then we're using the reinforced barrel, buffing this damage range all the way out to 61.9 meters, while also giving it a very solid bullet velocity buff. The vertical foregrip here, giving it a huge buff to the horizontal recoil control, while also giving it a recoil stabilization buff. Then we're using the extended mag 2, giving this a 60 round mag. You can also put the 3 on there if you want a 70. And then of course we're using the recoil springs, giving it a buff to horizontal and vertical recoil control. I like the iron sights specifically. If you don't like the iron sights, feel free to go and use the Kepler Microflex or whatever optic you want, from whatever optic makes you comfortable. All you have to do is take off the recoil springs and you're good to go. And then the Compact 92, I'm just... Oh, we got a little bit of a glitch in that dummy there. That's okay. But like I said, man, the Compact 92 just feels incredible. Kind of reminds you of the MP5 with the iron sights back in the day. Feels so good. For that Compact, I'm using the ported compensator muzzle. This will give you a huge buff to the first shot for recoil control and vertical recoil control. Reinforced barrel, giving you a buff to the bullet velocity and the damage range, buffing this all the way out to about 13.8 meters. That is the downfall of the Compact, that is that the damage range isn't as far. So if you want to put the long barrel, put it all the way out to 15 meters, you can. Then I'm using the extended mag 3 because this does go through ammo pretty quick, but this will give it a 60 round mag. And then we're using no stock here, giving you a buff to hip fire, movement, and strafing movement speed. And then I love the recoil springs. Like I said, especially for this one, it's difficult to control, but if you can control it, horizontal recoil and a very solid vertical recoil control buff here as well. Thank you guys again for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that noti bell so you don't miss a video like this or like any of these. We'll see you in the next one.